motion, slicing through like waves on the ocean. Tape to tape with perfect aim, setting up a scoring claim. The coach's voice booms from the bench, calling plays an expert cinch. Pucks on net, let 'em
Welcome
rip. We'll bring
to Cross Ice Pass, episode 35. I'm your host, Coach Steve Mosier, and I gotta say, Cross Ice Pass is a part of the Hockey Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp and DraftKings. So, guys, season's moving. Therefore, it's time for me to do my NHL picks for the year. Yes, people that know me, I will stick by my picks, even if they change. And I will fall and dive into the water if my boat sinks. I am totally fine with that. So come at me, bro, as they say. Going into the season, I wanted to make sure my picks were given out early. So here we go. Of course, I'd love to see my Wings head back to the playoffs. That's my numero uno thought. If they could win a series, that would be massive, but no way they go further yet. Maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe they won't make the playoffs. Maybe it'll get even worse. Maybe maybe the height was last year and Steve Yzerman gets fired or Lalonde gets fired or something. Who knows? I want them in the playoffs though. That is of course going to be my thing leading through the season. Another thing before I give my picks for the Eastern, Western, and Stanley Cup final, I think we're approaching something cool in the next few years that could happen that I think the game is really in need of. I think it could be, and like I said, come at me with all this, with all your thoughts on whether you think I'm right or wrong. And by the way, when you come at me, you better have a reason to debate. Don't just say that's stupid or something like that. If you're going to come at me, you better be just as informed as I am. I think we are approaching this idea that the Leafs could make the final. I mean, it's either the final or bust in the next 2 or 3 years. I also think that what would be very cool is it could be the Leafs versus the Oilers. Nothing better than an Austin Matthews versus Connor McDavid matchup in, the country where this sport came from would be amazing. I even think the Canucks could be going against the Leafs. So, come at that idea, but, the sport has been pretty stuck in the South in the last 5 years, and I'm ready for it to come back up to the cold. And I also think it's time for a Canada final. I think it could be very cool to have it back in the country where it was invented. That being said, here's my picks. Last year I picked the Stars out of the West to win the Stanley Cup. That's not going to be the case this year because of things that not only I saw recently on this new Amazon documentary, some footage that's in the trailer, plus the handshake line in the Stanley Cup Finals. Connor McDavid is ready. I think Connor McDavid's ready, and I think Oilers are going to come out of the West. I have to pick the Oilers. That being said, the main thing that will shuffle the West this year, against my pick is goaltending. Even with Ottinger being so good, with Hellebuck always winning the Vezina or being ready for the Vezina, he wasn't very good in the playoffs. Ottinger is the only one that has some type of performance in the playoffs. We've seen up and down performances by even Skinner. Like the Kings lost Cam Ward, their all-star goalie. They've got some young guys. we got our guy in Canucks might be injured half the season. Who knows? We don't know. He might be playing through pain. So yes, goaltending in the West is a problem. In the East, I'm going to get flack for this one too, but it would be kind of cool to have the Rangers take the East. I think that they have the strongest team overall. They have one of the best goaltenders. Defensively, they're strong. And Adam Fox leading the charge on that. Although I heard Lindgren might be injured for a little while going into the season. Now, if they can get their best players to still be, the best deep in the playoffs, we shall see, because they weren't against the Panthers. The Panthers shut down Panarin, Zibanejad, and Lafreniere isn't there yet. I think this year he's going to definitely have another step up in his development. The East story, though, is how close everything is. Going in, it's going to be nuts because the Devils have loaded up, the Sens have loaded up, the Habs have loaded up, and we're talking, we still have the Red Wings, the Sabres, even the Capitals loaded up. The Flyers are right there. So, and of course, I can't forget the Penguins, keeping Sidney Crosby around. But I think the Penguins are going to actually take a dive this year deeper into the bottom of the pool. So, Sidney Crosby can only do so much. Letang is, they're an old team. They don't have the best goaltending. They've got a lot of young guys, but then they don't have a lot of young stud prospects. So, anyway, I think it's going to be the Rangers in the East. Now, out of that, I really think the best player in the world when it comes to the Stanley Cup final is going to finally get his first championship. Going back to what I mentioned, Connor McDavid had the most interesting look on his face in the handshake line against the Panthers. And then seeing these highlights of him kind of, I would never think that McJesus would be this, loud and crazy in the room, but he's ready. And I think he's ready to get McDavid imprinted on the Stanley Cup. So I think this year is McJesus's time to raise the cup. And the fact that they got McDavid and Drysdale now kind of locked in, question as usual on the West. Like I said, the goalie, don't know Stuart Skinner if he's going to be, what we think he's going to. I think he's going to be a medium level goaltender, and meaning a medium level goaltender with a medium level defense core that did have some upgrades as far as, development through last year, but they didn't add much. I think they got Jeff Skinner. That's about it. So let's see, Oilers. I got you to win the Stanley Cup. So that's my picks for this season, for season 2 of Cross Ice Pass. And like I said, come at me, bro. All right, this week, happy, surprising, not surprising, and pretty unusual. Happy. Loved seeing Jessica Campbell coach her first game behind the bench for Seattle. Such a great step for women in the sport, and it's happened a day after the 32-year anniversary of Manon Rhéaume suiting up for Tampa. So great to see this progression. I've had a few really interesting people on here. I've had Alana Blahosky talking about, her gold medal win in 98, and how the progression of the 90s and the 80s for her were from her youth career on up. I talked to Amanda Pelkey about, how that next level of development is happening, and and her time with the Boston, the PWHL, the Fleet now they're called. And then I got to talk to Estella Rivas Bryant about what she's doing for little girls and in LA to really use hockey as a kickoff point to furthering their lives in general. So all of this is kind of, as I've been saying since the beginning of this podcast, women are saving this sport. Their inclusion and popularity to it is unbelievable. I'm going to pop up some data that I saw that I saved about how how girls are entering USA hockey and being a big part of the future of hockey. I think the PWHL will have an expansion. So yes, and awesome. Some more happy stuff. Alex Kanak Leipert suited up on D for the Oilers. Something that's cool about this is Alex is Thai-born, and if he makes the team, he will be the first Thai national to play in the NHL. Very cool for that. The development of the sport in that country, as well as, having that just kind of unique element to the Oilers roster. Cole Caulfield. Sorry, I had to. A piece of paper got stuck underneath a cord. So, Cole Caulfield debuts his new 13 jersey number in honor of his fellow USA Hockey hero, Johnny Hockey. Also, the Blue Jackets are going to bring Johnny's memory everywhere this season. I really love that. I think it's a solid move, and it shows a lot of respect for the organization, for the respect they had for Johnny Hockey as a player, and for, of course, the overall Goudreau family. I know we saw another Goudreau in one of the Flyers practices this week as well. I still have no idea why. Another happy thing. I still have no idea why hockey fans barely watch preseason. The first few games are awesome to see prospects. If you want to see your prospects in your jersey, even though they might end up being sent off wherever, this is the time. And, there's some good fights. There's some good tillies in these things. So if you like to watch some fighting in the NHL, you're going to see it pretty much every preseason game. It's going to happen. So, lastly, and happy, Face Off Inside the NHL announced that they're coming out October 4th on Amazon Prime. Very pumped for that. I don't know if you've seen the trailers. If you haven't, watch it. You're going to love it. I'm very excited for this because I think all this great media that has happened for football, for basketball, for baseball, and kind of like really seeing kind of the behind the scenes is going to be very cool. Surprising this week, these Fanatic jerseys are crazy. First, they're selling blank pro jerseys for $425 US, which, okay, if you're going to price it so high, whatever, but no one wants a blank jersey. People want names on jerseys. Do you really think people want a blank jersey? Question mark. And we are paying close to double. So they are done by a person in North America. I think it's great that they're employing this craftsmanship in Canada. I love it. I think that's great. But do we really have to pay double for it? Because I know all the materials are, are probably from the same place. I guess it's just the hands that are stitching them are different and getting paid probably well as they should. I'm seeing some teams adding an additional $100 for pro stitching to get the name and number on them. So we're talking $525 for a jersey. That's nuts to me. That's just crazy. There's not one sport that sells a jersey that's unsigned for that cost. Not one. Fanatics is nuts. The premium jersey is going for $230, but I need to see the difference. I hear the NHL store is doing a little thing this upcoming Saturday, the 28th, from noon to 6. I'm going to try to go step in there and just see. I want to feel the difference between the $525 one and the $230 one that is the normal price of the last. If there's not much of a difference other than, fight tags or, the double stitching on the elbow or something, I might, I might not just not. I'm going to try to avoid 525 for a jersey for sure. Not surprising, Carter Hart is fleeing Canada and is looking for an immigration lawyer. Good riddance. They just need to shove him over to Russia, so he can get away with whatever he wants there. I do want to say about this issue with Canadian Junior Hockey and Team Canada, get this thing done soon. I don't like that they keep saying they're going to wait a year, they're going to wait months before this is put into court. Get this, there's families involved here, and I'm sure they're ready to move on from this. So let's just get it moving. Like, what are we waiting for? Plus, I don't want to talk about it forever. We all know that it's happened, and the players that are involved should be punished, and we should know if they're going to be punished at the highest extent or not. Another not surprising moment. The rat Tony D'Angelo. Yes, everyone calls Marshawn the rat. That's just like a visual thing. Tony D'Angelo is an absolute rat. He is the worst teammate. He's been scratched because how he treats his teammates. He's been verbally racist. He's said stupid things in Twitter. I don't know why he ever had a chance in the NHL, and the NHL should be smart when a player like this comes in. They should have something in the contract that if you're going to be a racist, if you're going to be completely unhinged, then they should just be able to terminate your contract and you can go play beer league in Siberia. Good riddance to Tony D'Angelo. Unusual. Amazon also has thrown their hat in the live hockey ring with what they call Monday Night Hockey with Mark Messier, which is surprising to me, who I thought just signed a deal with ESPN. Not sure what that's about. Maybe he can play. He can be in both realms. I don't know what kind of agreements the NHL has on this, so we shall see. Also, Amazon Prime Coast to Coast is coming October 10th. For a red zone style broadcast, which is kind of cool. But I don't know. Red zone works because they switch it out when they get in the red zone. I don't know how they're gonna be able to switch all the time. There's 30 shots. There's 30 shots in a game generally. There's not 30 touchdown attempts in a football game. So they can kind of switch between the plays. So I'm kind of curious to see what that's going to be about. So now we have ESPN, TNT, and Amazon, as well as other local networks. It's going to be interesting. This better not get confusing. And please fix the blackout issue pronto, because that's the biggest problem. Today's interview is one that I'm really excited about, and I didn't expect. This week's guest is a player I met recently in Michigan when I was asked by episode 29's guest, Coach Derek Donette, to come out to his Bell Tire sled hockey team tryout at Big Boy Arena in Fraser, Michigan. They usually play in Taylor, but Taylor didn't have ice up yet, so they had to practice there. These players, when I went in, first off, I didn't even see the sleds when I first walked in because these guys are in the locker room, they're hamming it up. There's nothing any different in the room than the fact that when they get there out on the ice, they have to sit on a sled. But I was flying around, watched these guys flying around right in the first part of practice. I can't believe how fast they go. In person, I thought that they were pretty fast, but I never expected to see what I saw. But Coach Derek, he kind of walked over and tapped me on the shoulder, and he goes, "That's Tyler. He's the captain of Team Canada." And I'm like, and then he tells, and I forget the name of the other guys. Forgive me about that, but there were a couple other players from Team Canada, and also one female that made the Team USA cut for sled hockey. Let's focus on getting women's sled hockey into the Paralympics as soon as possible, because currently it's not. And I've heard that there's not a lot of countries, so maybe that's the stoppage point. But anyway, seeing Tyler, I kept my eyes on him, and all I was seeing was that he's the McDavid-esque player amongst his peers. Don't get me wrong, everyone out there was good. Stick handling, shooting, goal stopping, like everything was good. But Tyler was definitely a different breed. He was doing so many crazy things that we talk about in my chat with him. He was doing 360 so fast, stopping so fast, you know, crazy stick handling, popping pucks in the air and trying to bat them out of the air and stuff. It was unreal. So it was a really great experience to be part of that. Thank you, Derek. And thank you for. It was a memorable moment to see this just crazy level of pro level athleticism, at a different aspect of hockey, which was great. So many talk about Captain Canada and Sidney Crosby, but let's move over to our chat with the other Captain Canada. For you that live in Canada and see all the Gatorade commercials and all this stuff, where Tyler kind of is the sled hockey face in a way. We're gonna talk him through a lot of different things, and I am trying to approach my chat with him in a different way than others have, because he's been on a ton of podcasts. So let's see what Tyler says about how he's going to create his golden goal for Canada in 2026. All right, we've got a guy born in a small town in Ontario called Forrest. Played for the Lambton Junior Sting U16 AAA team in 08-09. After a broken leg in 2009, was diagnosed with spindle cell sarcoma in 2010, just before the OHL draft. His diagnosis, lost the use of his leg. Soon after his treatment, he found sledge hockey. We'll talk about that. In 2011, in 2012, in the ripe age of 18, made Team Canada. Since then, he has completed in 3 Paralympics in Sochi, Pyeongchang, and Beijing, with 2 silver medals and 1 bronze. 7 World Championship appearances with 3 gold, 4 silver. 2019, he was named captain of Team Canada. He has become the face of his sport, being featured in commercials for CCM, Gatorade, Canadian Tire, Panasonic, even Egg Farmers of Ontario. Then the list goes on. A true lover of the game, an amazing advocate for all types of people in our game, especially with kids. Welcome to Cross Ice Paths, Tyler McGregor.
Appreciate you having me. I'm excited. Looking forward to our conversation.
Tyler, for every guest, I do a little something that kind of throws my guest a little bit, but it also is kind of a good way to get us started. I ask every person I ask them, what is your fondest hockey memory? And it can be recent or an old one, whatever you want to throw at us.
I'll throw 2 at you. As a fan, and you may actually have a lot of American listeners, so this might not hit. But as a fan, I think for a lot of Canadian kids, like it has to be Crosby's OT golden goal on home ice. I guess I would have been 15, 16 years old watching that. So a pretty young age and like a pivotal point in my hockey career. That was incredible to witness. So my apologies to all the U.S. hockey fans out there. We still love you guys.
It's okay. It was pretty amazing. We were pretty amazed by it as well.
Yeah. I mean, like such a legend of the game, and Canada's first or a gold medal on home ice, like you can't beat that. And then as a player, For me, like just a little bit of recency bias, but we actually won our first world championship gold medal on home ice just back in May. And for me myself and for many of my teammates, like that was the first time we've ever had the chance to win with our family and friends in the stands. And so it was so special because for a couple of reasons. One, we hadn't won in 7 years, and so that felt pretty incredible. And then just to celebrate and have literally like hundreds of our family and friends in the locker room with us after the game, uh, that was something that I'll always cherish. So that one, as a player, definitely stands out.
That's pretty great. I love that you kind of believe me. I knew you were going to probably say the golden goal, so doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Well,
So
you know what? My number two memory as a fan too probably wouldn't hit very well because that would have been the Salt Lake City games. My
quite all right.
favorite players growing up was Joe Sakic, so um, he had an unbelievable game in that gold medal game there in Salt Lake as well. So I don't know if that would be a fan favorite either.
Well, I've got some Canadian listeners. I've got some worldwide listeners. But I do have to say, I really hope in this next Olympics, and now with this Four Nations situation happening around over the All Star game, that we get a little bit of this USA Canada rivalry at the men's hockey level, because I know you guys have it. I know the women have it. It's I love it. It's so hot. It's so aggressive, and as it should be.
Oh man, we've been missing it for a number of years. I guess really you see it a little bit at World Championships, but obviously you're missing all the players that are still competing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's not quite best on best, but um, yeah, we've been missing that rivalry. Like so exciting to watch. That's hockey at its best. Produces some of the most entertaining hockey that we could ever witness, especially with the players in the game today and the talent that's there. Um, and I gotta like that Canada U.S. rivalry right now would be incredible.
Oh yeah.
On both
Oh yeah.
sides, like the talent up and down the rosters is just out of this world.
Yeah. Austin Matthews lines up against Connor McDavid, which I've got a really wild bet that Edmonton will beat Toronto in the Stanley Cup final. And I have this dream. Listen, of course, I want my Red Wings there. That's my number one thought.
Yeah,
But it'd be really cool for Edmonton to play Toronto in the Stanley Cup final.
that'd be insanity.
Yeah, it would be so awesome.
And as someone who's lived in Toronto for the past 8 years or so, I I don't know how everyone feels about Leafs fans, but oh my God, they would be wild if that ever
Yeah.
happened. And it's been
Well, the thing is that's interesting is that you grew up a Leafs fan, correct?
I did, yeah.
Well, the thing is, the fact that I also noticed that you're become a bit of a Detroit Lions fan, it's not too much of a difference as far as
I know.
not in the championships and things, but the fans of both teams are so aggressive and serious about their team, and they love their team, and I love that because some people are fair weather, and we know that.
I've tortured myself as a sports fan. Although, man, I know you're a Detroit guy. Like the Lions they're looking hot, and it's good to see because for all Lions fans, like we've had a pretty tough go the past couple of years.
Yeah. No, I mean that was kind of when I was a kid playing baseball, and there was football there because we had Barry Sanders, but hockey just started kind of heating up in the 90s, and that's what really, I kind of had the choice between both. And the Red Wings being good in the late 80s, early 90s and on, and starting that kind of dynasty really brought me into the sport, and now I'm addicted to it and I can't get rid of it. And so
Yeah. Well,
that's all it took.
honestly, like that that Red Wings, and I'm a '94 birth year, so I'm a '90s kid, and that Red Wings Avalanche rivalry was honestly probably one of the main driving forces around what made me fall in love with hockey as specifically as a fan, but also partially as a player. Um, that was some of the best hockey I've ever watched, um, and especially as a young kid. It
Oh
was
yeah,
incredible.
and you said you're a big fan of Sakic, so
Yeah,
you were probably and it's okay. You're probably rooting for Colorado, but
I wasn't no like that. So I've always been a Leafs fan. Like I've always cheered for the team, but like and maybe I'm the type of fan that people hate, but like I also just like I love certain players. Like I'm still like Nathan McKinnon is my by far my favorite player in the NHL right now. So like I kind of like I watch those games and cheer for those players more so than I necessarily am like an ultra loyal fan to a certain team.
yeah, no, that makes tons of sense. I mean, it's it's kind of interesting because my first one of my first things I wanted to ask you was, you know, one thing I've noticed kind of looking at some of the podcasts you've been on and things like that is things are really focusing on the thing that happened to you with your cancer and things like that. But it's almost impossible to find Tyler before that happened,
hmm
and I really am kind of curious and you're already kind of telling me being a fan of of watching those Avalanche Red Wings games and stuff. What was Tyler as a kid growing up with the sport of hockey?
Well, I actually my parents put me in skates when I was 18 months old. Um, I was barely walking, and and I grew up in a really small town. Um, just for reference, like it's probably about 30 minutes from the Sarnia Port Huron border, um, about an hour and 15 to Detroit, uh, and it's quite a small town. Our childhood home was literally a 400-meter walk to our local community rink. Um, and so, like, I lived in this little hockey haven where we had a backyard rink every year, and then I could just walk or drive to the rink, whether I was playing or just watching. Um, and so, my dad and I were kind of rink rats, honestly. And then my best friend, who was also a really good hockey player, lived right across the street. So whether we were on his backyard rink or mine, or in the summer playing road hockey, like we lived and breathed it. We really did. And that's not to say, like I also played. I played a ton of soccer growing up. I played basketball, a little bit of baseball. Um, pretty much every sport that we could play in our hometown. Um, and so I was just a really active kid, but hockey was always uh, the driving force behind many of my decisions. And I don't know, I love where I grew up, and um, like I was one of those young kids that anytime I wasn't playing hockey, I was watching Hockey Night in Canada, or the NHL Network was huge back then, and they just play these old rivalry games, these classic games on all day throughout the day. So I'd get home from school, flip one on, and just sit there and watch it. And um, like
All hockey all the time.
yeah, it was incredible. It was like 24 hours a day, whenever you wanted to. Like that was before YouTube now, so I guess a lot of kids watch that way. But um, no, like that was me as a kid. I remember like I either always had a stick in my hand, or I was running around town on my bike or rollerblades, whatever it was. Um, and yeah, I just every single year that went by, every season that went by, I started to fall in love with hockey more and more.
Yeah, and it sounds like when you started getting to your teenage years, that you were starting to play at some pretty high level for some pretty high level teams in the AAA world. And the one thing I always ask, especially when I always run into someone from Canada, is what are the outside of the Sting, which is the one that I found. What are some of the interesting teams you played for, or or even some of the players? I mean, you're the right age that some of the guys that are in the NHL right now probably were floating around Ontario at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So
So I would have played on the Lambton Junior Sting was probably my longest tenured team, which is based out of Sarnia. I also played for the Huron Perth Lakers. I would say like some of the more interesting teams I played on were a lot of spring hockey teams. Um, so like a couple seasons we threw together a team. We were called the Kitchener Junior Rangers. And then another season we took all the best players out of our league in southwestern Ontario, and we were called the Southwest 94s. Um, and that
that's a
was
cool
actually
name. I like that.
yeah,
I
that
like
was
that.
actually quite a really good team. We competed against some of the best in North America, really. But I don't know, some of the current guys I would have played with and against playing in the NHL. I'm bad with names off the top, but I know Brendan Gaunce is kind of battling for a roster spot right now. He's kind of been up and down between the NHL and AHL. Josh Brown was a teammate of mine on quite a few spring hockey teams. He's out in Edmonton now. Um, he's a big, tough defenseman. Uh, and there's others, but they're escaping my mind right now.
It's okay. Um, no, I mean, because we get it in Michigan, but like I never really played. I never got that far because I didn't start until I was in my teenage years. So um, it became just a pure. I didn't think that I could make a career out of it, and I know that you were just about ready for your OHL draft and things like that. And some of that conversation, I'm sure, was starting to happen that you could pursue this. Um, One thing I'm curious about too, kind of leading up to where your U16 team and where things kind of switched around after that, because I know that you kind of had a broken leg injury and then things kind of switched for you. What was the process that got you to that diagnosis? Because I know that when you broke your leg, there was a bit of a time gap there.
Yeah, it was quite a long process, which isn't normal at all. But I was still really healthy throughout it all. So I fractured my my tibia and fibula and in a hockey game, and I had surgery. They repaired that right away. Um, I was walking, I would say within 3 to 4 weeks or so, and recovering really well. I started skating. I was back on skates 6 to 8 weeks later. Um, but kind of through that, as I got back onto my feet and as I was weight bearing again, is when I started to develop a mass where I broke my leg. And so, like I said, I was really healthy still at the time. So we were unsure of what was going on. Um, and it got to a point where around Christmas time, early January of Christmas time 2009, early January 2010, um, I was still practicing with my team, or returning to practice with my team, obviously without contact, but the mass below my left knee was quite large, like literally the size of a tennis ball almost. To the point where like I have no idea how I was strapping my shin pads on comfortably, and I'm sure it wasn't very comfortable. Um, and eventually, like I, I was still pain free, but I had gone in to visit my orthopedic surgeon to get cleared for contact once again. We were actually set to start our first playoff series against Windsor about a week and a half or 2 weeks after my appointment, and my X-ray had shown that about, call it, about 2 inches of my bone was missing. So there was a titanium rod that I had inserted 4 months earlier that was really the only thing supporting my leg. And from there, they immediately booked a surgery, and they were like, "We got to figure this out right now." So from that point, things started to change pretty quick, and that's when I learned of my diagnosis.
That's that just even as a teenager, as a youth, trying. I mean, for anybody to have to deal with that, that had to be an unbelievable amount of like, holy crap, you want to take what off my body?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I kind of think that's interesting about your story and looking through it is that during that time, when after you had to remove your leg, everything I read, it kind of sounds like it would like happen so fast, and I know it didn't,
Mm-hmm.
because I can only imagine, you had mentioned that you thought your hockey career was kind of going to go, that was your biggest concern. I know in a lot of interviews that you were like, of course that was your thing, because when you're 15 or 16 years old, you're thinking about, what you're going to do when you're 18 to
Yeah.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the one thing that I'm curious about after your treatments, or actually, as you're going through your treatments, I know you're probably really not in the best place because you're dealing with this, but I'm really curious about when you kind of had this moment of like what's next moment, and when that kind of started to enter your mind, because I know you had I know you had all these tough things to deal with and think about and
Mm-hmm.
decisions to make, but I know that I'm curious about when that moment was like, well, what can I do now?
I would say that started the week before my surgery. Um, that's when it really kind of smacked me in the face, and I was like, "Wow, this is happening." Um, and I remember like waiting to go in the operating room before that surgery was such an emotional time for me. Knowing like this is, or really like knowing the finality of it, and my life was forever gonna change. And then the way it worked is that I had my amputation, and I had about a 3 week recovery period where I would not have any chemotherapy. Um, so during that 3 weeks, I went into a rehab hospital to first recover, and then get fitted with prosthetic leg and try to learn how to walk again. So that period of time was really the first time I would say it hit me, and I started to have those thoughts about like, what am I going to be able to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And you kind of mentioned this, like most 15, 16-year-olds like don't really think that far ahead. Like
Right.
you think about tomorrow, or well, you live in the moment, maybe think about tomorrow or next year, whatever it may be. Um, so I would say, in many ways, as difficult as it was, it really helped me grow up quick. Um,
Yeah.
and and I'll say through that process, like, I, and I've said this in maybe not in the exact words, but like in so many ways, like hockey has changed my life, but especially during that time, like I believe it helped save it. Like there were so many difficult moments where like the next day, the next year, the next 5 years were so unclear, um, on what my future was going to look like. But and that's scary. Um, but like I specifically remember like having a horrible day laying in a hospital bed, and it was 2010, so Philly and Chicago were playing in the Cup Finals. That was the Cup Final where Patrick Kane scored the OT winner that no one but him knew went in. Um, and like I vividly remember that because it was just like a moment of joy in this time of turmoil. And for me, like I think all those moments collectively helped me believe that, like, yeah, maybe I don't know exactly what's next, but it somehow helped me believe that I'd still find my way back to this game that I've always loved.
That's a really poetic way to put it together. Because the thing that I love what you mentioned is you really had to grow up fast when this happened, and then on top of it, those moments of joy that you were having watching the game and still having that love for it still kept your adolescence as well. So you could still, be the kid that, as we know now, as older men, we all need that once in a while, and it's really helpful.
100%.
So I love that. You know, the way you dealt with it, and I also know that seeing some and doing some of the research, I know you had a really great support system with your family,
Hmm.
um, and kind of going through this really shocking moment for a young person is a lot. Um, the one thing about that, though, that I'm curious, because you mentioned it's mentioned a lot that a kind of a coach suggested sled hockey to you, but I'm really curious. Can you speak about that coach and what that conversation was like?
Yeah. So actually, he was one of my former spring hockey coaches, and he had been one of his colleagues was actually the former coach uh, of the Canadian national team. Uh, and so my introduction to sled hockey actually was during the Vancouver Paralympics. So aligned with my time in the hospital, and I had actually after my surgery and after I'd started to recover, had like tried to get back on skates. I'm an above knee amputee, so it is extremely difficult to skate. I can still do it, but I was frustrated with my my ability to do it well in comparison to how I was able to skate before, and so I was struggling with that transition, and so just in a casual conversation, he suggested that I give it a try. Like, it is an opportunity to play the same sport in a different way at a high performance level, and I was a little hesitant to begin with, just because I was so unfamiliar with it. I didn't know anyone in the game, but should have known that the hockey community is the same across the board. Like, there's a lot of great people within it that welcome you in, and so I'm so thankful that he made those connections, and I found a program actually out of London where I started, and um, right away was I remember, like, showed up there. They gave me my first sled, um, loaned me the necessary equipment to play, uh, and from there I fell in love with it. Um, Over the next several months, that um, has blossomed into something that I couldn't imagine my life without.
Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/THPN. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. And of course, get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
That's great because you answered my next question, which was, what created that spark and what those first sessions were like. And I can only imagine, the listeners don't know that I got to kind of see you guys practicing and to see your abilities, to see some of your future teammates' abilities on this on the Bell Tire sled hockey team, and it was so, man, it's one of my most rewarding moments. Like, that will go into one of my fondest hockey memories ever. Just seeing, of course I've seen it live on TV. I've seen things like that, but to actually see you guys digging around, being creative hockey players was so awesome to see, and so it was awesome to be a part of. The one thing that kind of, as much as you wanted to play, what did I write here? The one thing about that's interesting to me is once you started getting into it, and once you started being, playing, were you like spending the same amount of time that you were before?
Yeah.
As far as on your ice time?
Yeah. I would say, like, right away, maybe not as much ice time, but a lot just like in my parents' basement, sitting in a sled, trying to get used to playing hockey with two hands, being able to shoot, stick handle, pass with two hands. So first few months, it was a lot of that, just trying to familiarize myself with being in a sled. And then just because I didn't have the ice time necessarily available. But then once I learned those skill sets, like, I was chasing down every ice time I possibly could. And the thing about it too was that it was really refreshing in a lot of ways, because I had to change the way I prepared quite a bit. Obviously, it's an upper body sport, so and it's an ambidextrous sport as well. So I had to really, as a right hand dominant person, train my left hand to be just as effective, to be able to perform at the highest level. And so it was refreshing because I had to, like, completely learn a new skill set and try to navigate within my mind on how to best do that. And so for me, like, I broke it down in terms of, like, okay, I'm gonna practice just regular household chores with my non-dominant hand. I'm gonna brush my teeth with my left hand. I'm gonna cook with my left hand. I'm gonna do everything with my left hand, and then slowly build that into more advanced hand-eye coordination drills. And that's kind of how I started to evolve that skill set. And then as soon as I did and felt comfortable in a sled, then every ice time I could get on, I was chasing that.
And the thing that's so amazing is, I know the sled hockey community is a pretty, I wouldn't say it's a small community, but it's a tight community, and there's not tons of players. But for you to make the national team, I know you got your sweaters behind you there on the wall. I love it. But for you to make the team so fast at the age of 18 was really amazing. When you got that call to, to not only, evolve and change in your sport that you were so new to, but to also, to be able to represent your country in it.
Man, it was such an honor, and and truthfully, I was still in high school, so I was pretty shocked. And like I guess it's 12, 13 years later, but like uh, I would say at that time, being new to the sport, like I would say, and I don't know for sure, like this is something our former coach would have a better idea of, but I would say I was a project at that time, someone with potential um, in the future, and so uh, I was there to be a sponge and to like learn from some veteran guys, incredible athletes, um, and and that's really, especially my first year on the team, but I would really say my first few years on the team, I was just trying to absorb and learn everything that I possibly could, whether that was um, on ice skills, even how to prepare off the ice, or even just how to be a good human being, and ultimately, like, in addition to that, how to be an advocate.
Sorry to have that blockade.
No, no, you're totally fine. Um, so there's a ton of different players that I learned a lot of that from, and a lot were guys who I grew up um, watching within our own team in Canada. Players like Brad Bowden, Greg Westlake, Billy Bridges, um, that really were a pivotal part in like driving the performance side of our sport forward. Um, but then, even opposing players like Declan Farmer out of the U.S. is one of the most skilled, talented players, and so um, I've watched a lot and referred a lot to some of the things that he does, and how he's really elevated the or what's possible within our sport. So, whether it's working with players directly, or just, you know, watching opposing players and what they do. Yeah, I use a lot of that as a resource of my own, and then obviously coaches have such a pivotal impact on that as well in helping you um, sort of grow and evolve as you move through your career.
Yeah, it's I remember asking you too because I was asking who I don't know who's the goalie that was with us that day.
Corbin Watson,
Okay.
yeah, he's a teammate of mine.
And just asking him some of the things that he has to adjust as a goaltender on a sled
Hmm.
was unbelievable, and we had such a hard time scoring on him. And then I had a video of you switching from right hand to left hand and then popping the puck up and trying to hit it in the middle of the air, which it didn't go in, but it was a pretty inventive thing. And then I asked you about, because I kind of I'm kind of a gearhead, so I had to ask you about your profiling and how yours is so different because I saw you literally do a 360 turn
Hmm.
so fast with this sled really low to the ground, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing I've seen in a while. Um, but without divulging your secrets, what are some things you do with your gear that are specific to you?
Um, so yeah, I don't mind divulging my secret for sure. I would say one of the things over the past number of years that I've started to do different. Like I used to just do a regular 5/8 3/4 inch cut depending on the ice. Um, but like some of the skills that you just alluded to, like your ability to do that typically requires, in our sport at least, duller blades, the ability to slide and glide a little bit better. So I am pretty typically now. It always depends on what kind of ice you're skating on. But I'd
Right.
be like an inch and a quarter. Um, just gives you a little bit better glide. I find my edges are just so much better. And I still don't lose the ability to really cut well either. Like I can still turn on a dime if need be, which actually is pretty pivotal in our sport. But like I don't lose that ability. Um, and then for me, like I one of the things that I've started to do um, in our sport, and as you get better in our sport, you typically, the width of your blades usually starts quite wide, and then just to improve your sled skills and your balance, you start to move them closer together. Um, and pretty much every player within our sport follows that progression, and I certainly did as well. But I found over the past couple years, I've started to experience like increasing the width of my blades to a point where it doesn't affect my ability to turn. But um, truthfully, like I'm a strong guy, but I'm still a pretty small guy. Like I'm 165 pounds, like 5'9", and we play against some big dudes. So I've started to
I'm
increase
sure, yeah.
my blades to to about an inch, maybe a bit more, um, just to make sure, like, when you're going to battle in a corner, I'm going against a much bigger player. Like, I want to stay on my blade, stay upright. You expend a lot of energy on your side. So, those are two of the things I experiment with that quite a bit. And then outside of that, like I flew out to Calgary a number of years ago and had a custom bucket made that I think that, at least in Canada, was really first of its kind. So that would be another thing. It's just like, it's fully custom to my body, perfect fit, which means I cannot gain or lose any weight throughout the course of a season. I'm pretty stuck where I am, or have to find a way to be. Um, and and then I'm working on some sticks. I'll keep that hush hush for now until they're officially released. But yeah, working on a fun like custom stick project right
Oh, I have a wall that I'm looking at right in my apartment that we're recording, that a signed stick by Tyler McGregor seems like it has a good place for it. Wink,
now. I
wink.
like that.
um, that's great. Kind of, I'm glad you weren't so worried about divulging too many things there. Because just like any equipment, like, that's like I mentioned, that's why I'm such a gearhead about it and so interested in the difference of things and seeing, from our skate, so many different guys and different sleds, different things. Like you say, I'm sure some guys grow,
hmm
some guys gain weight, some guys lose weight. And I can only imagine if the sled has any type of give, that your mobility that you had when I saw you on the ice was a big part of that sled, and having that fit.
hmm Yeah, like, truthfully, like, it is probably the most important piece of equipment that we have. Like, it really is. Um, and every body type is so different within our sport. Um, so you really, in particular, like the bucket that you sit in, like you want to feel as though you are one with that. Um, and I would say it's much like any hockey player in a pair of skates. Like you want to feel like they're completely custom to fit your foot. So it truly is so important for a number of reasons, for comfort, but also for performance, like your ability to be agile, um, and for the bucket to be light so that you can um, have the ability to maintain speed within the game. Yeah, it's such an important piece of equipment.
One thing I'm curious about, just because the speed of sled hockey is, to me, pretty even to any hockey, really. And I, like, once you guys did your warm up in that practice I was at, I couldn't believe how fast you guys were going. And I'm like, oh my God, they're moving so fast. But part of that, the thing that it makes me curious about the next questions are a little bit about kind of your pregame prep, and knowing that, you're basically a pro athlete that's been doing this now for, 13 years, and how that preparation has changed over time.
What I'll say is there's a lot of miles on my body now, a lot more than there was at 18. So my warm up pregame has gotten significantly longer. In particular, I would say over the past like 4 or 5 years, um, and a large part of that is focused on my shoulders and wrists. Like I find those two in particular are what our sport is hardest on, um, and so I spend a lot of time focusing there, just making sure I'm feeling loose and ready to go before game time. But like my pregame routine is, um, it's pretty simple. Like I'm not an overly superstitious guy. Um, I like to, uh, depending on game times, if we have a 7 p.m. game or a late afternoon game, I'm someone who, um, outside of our team video meeting, like likes to watch a little bit of film in the morning, do like a little bit of pre-scout, whenever I have some time. I do a lot of, um, like mental performance work, a lot of visualization, particularly on game days. And then, I already talked about our off ice warm up, which, pretty typically is about 30 to 45 minutes before we get on for, um, on ice warm up. Um, Outside of that, like you'll find me just hanging out, drinking coffee, and being in the locker room, just being one of the guys. Like, um, yeah, like other than making sure my body and my mind are ready, like I'm not. I have a pretty strict routine, but I'm not superstitious, I'd say.
Okay, you're not like Nicholas Lidstrom
Yeah,
walking through a certain entrance and things like that
no,
every day for his entire career. I
I
love
drive
that.
myself crazy.
I know. Yeah. Um, the one thing I want to kind of, before I move into some of the other things that you work on outside of the sport, and I'm curious to ask. I know you're on this Bell Tire team with Derek, and I know that you've been on some other teams before. But I'm also curious where your head is at leading into 2026. I know it's a couple years off, but what's the approach? What's your, to visualize it? What's kind of your hope, and what's the things that you guys are working on to lead into 2026?
Yeah, you know what? It's gonna be here before we know it. I think we're currently sitting at probably about 18 months, um, away from that. And you know what? Our approach going into this season, really, like we're coming off our first World Championship win in 7 years. Um, so it's been a long time. And what I really want to stress within our team is that what's happened has happened. Like, we can feel good about that, but, um, that has come and passed. Um, and to be able to stay on top of your sport now requires even more effort and intention and attention to detail. And it requires you to seek out hard things, to find a way to continue to get better on a day-to-day basis, both as individuals and as a collective team. And so really, like, that will be, uh, our approach heading into this season. Is now we're coming into a point that is sort of unfamiliar for our team, where I mentioned we hadn't won in 7 years. So, um, we're now the team that everyone's chasing down, and there's a sense of urgency, I think, that's associated with that. um, so we have to be really urgent in how we prepare. You know in high performance sport, like, everyone works hard. That is sort of a prerequisite to making it to this level, and so it's all about, like, how do we keep adding things in a positive way? Like, how do we keep finding new creative ways to improve. Maybe try to subtract something that held us back, if we can find some of those things. But no, ultimately our approach is going to be a sense of urgency to get better. Like, we don't want to rest just and pat ourselves on the back just because of the way last season ended. We know we have our biggest rivals, the U.S., are an incredible team who, quite truthfully, dominated the sport for the past, call it 7 to 10 years, and they're coming right back for us.
Yeah, but it sounds like you guys are in the right, trajectory to, to definitely challenge for that. I mean, you guys have met them so many times in the finals. That's why you guys have lots of silver medals, just as well as the gold medals. But no, I think that's a safe approach. I'm sure that you know um, getting to Italy will be great. I know that you mentioned in a lot of other places that the sport's taking you kind of around the world, and now you'll be able to get the Italy stamp on your passport.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. That'll be a really cool spot to have the games, and also just I mean, my family will have a real nice vacation while we're competing.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of moving off the ice. On the Hockey to Hell and Back podcast with Brady Leavold, you talked about your mental game, and I really liked. Um, I'd like the listeners to hear about some of the habits that you follow to keep you so positive and successful.
There's a lot of different things, that I try to do as much as possible. Like, um, I'm someone who, like, I enjoy meditation. I enjoy particularly trying to stay in the moment as much as possible. Um, and I'd say that's a critical part of that. Um, for me, I've found a lot of value in that mindfulness, and transitioning that to specifically to how it relates to hockey and performance in hockey. Like, I, both intentionally and unintentionally, because I think about the game so much, I do so much visualization, um, and whether we talked a bit about creativity, whether that's just kind of brainstorming new ways to be creative, just unintentionally thinking of what I'd like to do differently on our power play or PK, whatever it may be. I do so much of that, and then obviously, um, I also, as I mentioned, like, build that into my pregame routine as well, and ensure that I get minimum 5, I would say, to 15 minutes of, like, intentional visualization on a game day. Um, that's another thing I do, and I've also found a lot of value, particularly over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years in journaling, um, and in different forms. Like, sometimes within the heat of a competition. Like, sometimes you have a bad game and you just need to let it go, um, or sometimes it could be, um, once again, just getting out ideas onto paper, that I've visualized in my head. But I found a lot of value in that, uh, in different forms. I think an area I could get better is being more structured, in how I do it. But um, that's something I've really added to my mental game recently.
I love that, and it's become you know such a big thing that's being talked about in pro sports overall that a lot of really successful athletes are doing these things um, just because it's it as much as you're visualizing the game, The thing I love about meditation for any athlete is that it just takes you out of the game a little bit,
Mhm.
um, which is, I think, a healthy thing as well.
Yeah,
Just taking 10 or 15 minutes to just not be in the thing that you're in so much.
yeah. And I actually, the one thing that slipped my mind too that I'll just add, um, in case there's any kid out there that finds value in it. But in speaking with one of our coaches last year, um, we have a lot of conversations about it within our team about, I mean, a variety of subjects, and one in particular was going into last year's World Championship. Um, there was a little added, or I guess quite a bit of added pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of fear. Um, as I've alluded to, like we hadn't won in so long, and we felt like we were ready. And I was certainly feeling that. And admittedly, last season would have been um, my fifth as captain, and we hadn't won anything over that time. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I was just sort of relaying this message to him, um, and I found it was really affecting me uh, within a game, within the context of a game. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to perform literally in every moment, every shot on net I had, every scoring chance I had that I didn't convert on, um, would really affect me negatively. And so one of the strategies we came up with was was just finding different, like, for me, it was three keywords that I could come back to the bench and say to myself to come back to the moment and to be mindful. And for me, like, those turned out to be um, something that had nothing to do with hockey. I wanted something that to really calm and relax me, and I'm from Southern Ontario, and we have the Great Lakes around us. So I grew up around the Great Lakes. So my three words were light blue and clear. Um, you know, kind of just took me back to being a kid at home and being by the lake and just feeling relaxed and composed, um, and sort of allowed me to take a breath and be prepared to go out and perform the next shift, knowing that when that opportunity comes again, I'm going to take the shot and maybe it'll go in next time.
Love that. That's such a great thing, because it's something that as a coach I constantly, at all age groups, at all levels, um I always I call it the aw shucks moment. I always tell them, like, don't take a shot. And you see this in kids that just are starting their development. They'll shoot and their whole shoulders will drop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you know, Wayne Gretzky missed a lot of shots, a lot more shots than he put in the net.
Mm-hmm.
So don't always have that all shucks moment, because it also, in the moment in a game, it'll take you out of the moment. And
Exactly.
when the team needs you is right then, not, because you're worried about your failure.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to defend. You still have to go down the ice and make sure that you're not scored on as well.
Exactly.
So I really love that. Those are great. That's a great kind of mental plan that you have as far as your meditation, your journaling, and having these keywords to kind of just get you to be like, okay, settle down, Tyler. I gotta get out there for the next shift.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, the other thing, kind of outside of hockey, I noticed this 42-kilometer moment you skated for the Terry Fox Foundation. It was so awesome. And on top of that, and seeing the videos that CCM had put out, and some other videos that had mentioned it, um, love it. And I just love your constant message of accessibility, inclusion, and diversity in all levels of the sport of hockey. Talk about that importance, and what are some of the initiatives that are currently working on?
Well, I'll just say that, like, I feel so grateful and privileged to have had the opportunity now for literally my entire life to play this amazing sport. And regardless of who you are and where you come from and what your background is. I believe everybody should have that opportunity if they want it. And I've met so many incredible people through this sport from all walks of life, and some of which be playing a Paralympic sport, or being around a lot of people with disabilities. Some people don't have as easy access to be able to participate and compete in this sport. And so, as someone who I feel like has a platform and the ability to help change that and make an impact, I feel empowered to do so. And whether that's creating access and making sure players or fans or coaches or whoever it may be at any level of sport has the ability to be involved in whatever capacity they want to, that is so important to me. And beyond that, like, I'm involved in a number of different organizations who have just had such a profound impact on me. Like the Terry Fox Foundation was who I I did the fundraiser across Canada for. I think we ended up raising roughly, I don't have the number top of mind, but roughly about $130,000 for the Terry
That's
Fox
great.
Foundation.
Congrats.
Thank you. All in support of cancer research. I sit on the board for Make-A-Wish Canada, who I was fortunate to, as a young kid, to go on a wish trip, and we went to Hawaii. I guess it would have been 2011. And I always say, like, that was really the moment that started to transform my life. Like, as a new amputee, I learned to surf. We're in Maui. Like, what a beautiful spot. Like, we went on so many hikes. It was the first time, like, I got to be an active kid again. And so I've been involved with Make-A-Wish for a number of years. I'm fortunate to sit on the board now and support them. And additionally, like, obviously sport has had such a profound impact on me. So involved in a number of committees here in Canada, particularly our Canadian Paralympic Committee, and another organization called Own the Podium, which was created in Vancouver 2010, or in the lead up to Vancouver 2010, just to promote high performance sport within our Olympic and Paralympic sports system.
That's pretty great. I mean, you definitely are a busy man, which is great, and I think it's really wonderful what you're doing, not just in your sport, but also outside of the sport, to encourage people to come to your sport. And also, I know you're a big advocate for youth hockey and trying to push that and trying to be involved with that. And some of the things that you've went through have really, I'm sure it's really helpful when you talk to these kids and being able to tell them your story. And when they get so upset about some little tiny moment or some little tiny part in a game or something, your story really brings that into cement a bit, because it's there's always going to be another game, there's always going to be another moment.
Absolutely.
So I really love that. I think that's really great. The thing I love about hockey versus some of the other sports, I got to admit, we have a tendency to be a little bit more vocal about these really important moments of inclusion and diversity, and we understand that it's a super expensive sport at all levels, and we want everyone to be, at least try it, to have that possibility.
Absolutely. No, and you hit the nail on the head. Like, that's the thing. The more people that try it, the more fall in love with it. And, this sport itself, but also the teams that you get to be a part of, the goals that you get to share collectively, and like the lessons and the growth I think that you experience through our sport is just, it's unmatched.
Yeah, for sure. Just getting close to kind of tying things up here. There's one thing, and it's right behind you, that I'm super curious about, because it's always the question, especially now that you told me that Joe Sakic was one of your favorites. Why number 8?
I actually don't have a great story for this. So when I first made Team Canada, I did request a couple different numbers, both 17 and 19, and they were both well, actually 17 was one of the previous captains of our team had just retired, and that was his number. But I guess I shouldn't say I don't have a great story, because 8 was available, and one of my fondest experiences during or right after the Vancouver Olympics, or literally right after my diagnosis. I was at a rink in London. I was attending like 2 of the teams I competed against in our league. It was the finals of playoffs, and Drew Doughty, his parents were there. He's from London, and his parents came to the rink to visit me and brought his gold medal, gave me a jersey. It was my first time ever touching an Olympic medal, and so that was a pretty impactful meeting, really early in my diagnosis, and he immediately became one of my favorites. And so like when 17 and 19 were both taken, I saw it was available. I was like, I like that.
That's pretty awesome. Now, I mean, that's an awesome story. We gotta get a hold of Drew Doughty and tell him about that, because that's huge. That had that much impact to you. It sounds like along the route of all of this for you, there were moments that kind of like those. I can only imagine when you're trying to now, as the captain of of Team Canada, and really trying to encourage a winning culture, to try to go after that gold. And you had these moments where you got to put it in your hand and really, man, I got to get one of these.
Absolutely.
It's so good. Tyler, you're such a Canadian hero for all that you do on and off the ice. I was gonna say it earlier, but I thought it'd be better to say it near the end of our conversation. Is that everyone talks about Captain Canada and Sidney Crosby, but I know that you've done so much, not only locally but nationally, for the sport of hockey, and for sled hockey especially. So I would put you in the same boat as the Gatorade commercial did, as Captain Canada. You're the other Captain Canada. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
congrats
that.
congrats for all that you've done. You deserve everything that you get. Of course, I want US to win in 2026, but I've got now I'm kind of torn, because I definitely want to see you with a gold medal as well. So keep
Hey,
your
no
advocacy up. I mean, listen, there's a lot of players in all times, even when, I'm a little older than you, and seeing when I was just kind of at the height of really watching the sport, not just playing it, in the 96 series between USA and Canada. I think it was a 3-game final they ended up with. I don't know if it was the World Championship or the World Cup, but it's, when you're talking about kind of just watching hockey all the time, that's the series I watch, because you had Gretzky and Lemieux versus Pat LaFontaine and Jeremy Roenick and Mike Modano, and it was just um, such an amazing thing. And I'm so excited to be able to see you in the Paralympics and things going forward as well. So Tyler McGregor, thank you so much for your time and all that you do.
It's been a pleasure, Steve. No, I appreciate you having me, and thank you for the well wishes. And I'm excited to see how this podcast grows, and I'm excited to follow along. So thanks for what you do as well.
Thank you so much. What a chat with Tyler. Such a humble player. Such a great guy. Really, when I got to meet him, I think he had to head on because he lived in Windsor, so he had to drive in. But excited to not only release this episode but also have a beer with him sometime because he seems like a great guy to just have a good chat with. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. He is a true pro. It shows not only in his skill on the ice, but what he does all over Canada and in his sports community, and especially in youth hockey. I really like that he's using his platform to really not just be like, you know what, I'm Captain Canada. He uses his platform to be involved in everything, including a lot of his beliefs in including everybody to our sport in all aspects of hockey, which is great. Sled hockey is something all hockey fans should be watching. It is seriously awesome stuff. I couldn't believe the energy and the excitement. And I'll admit, because I think sled hockey doesn't really show up in the NHL world. I think it should start doing that so we can kind of see little exhibition things happening between periods. I'd really love to see some of these outdoor games get a sled hockey situation happening. Maybe at Ohio Stadium when the Red Wings play the Blue Jackets. Maybe Coach Derek and his team with Tyler can get the Bell Tire sled team over there. Thank you again to the Bell Tire team for including me. And even though I was not prepared to coach, I didn't have my coach's uniform. I watched, I basically was on the ice with a Dylan Larkin t-shirt and Derek let me borrow a helmet, but it was too tight. So I luckily was there with my player gear. So I had to use my player stuff. So that was a great conversation with Tyler. I hope everyone keeps an eye on him. I hope everyone keeps an eye on sled hockey. It's really amazing. If you like rugby in the Paralympics and notice how hard those guys play, this game has got all of that and more in my mind. So definitely check it out. As a Detroit native, I have to say, watching the Tigers fight to the playoffs has been awesome. The Lions are favorites to win the Super Bowl, and the Wings fought so hard and missed the playoffs only because John Tortorella pulled his goalie for no reason when they were tied. Thank you, John Tortorella, for screwing the Red Wings from playing the Rangers, which they would have lost to, but I live in New York City, and it would have been really great to see a Red Wings playoff game in New York. Thanks, John Tortorella. I'll never forget this, believe me. Really awesome to see Detroit sports back in the forefront. Let's not talk about the Pistons because why? But let's go Tigers. Hopefully by the time this shows up, they will have locked in and figured that out. Also, I wanted to mention, I've got some koozies that they're gone. Please, if you got a koozie from me, use it. Give people the QR code to my site so they can access the content. I know that there's coasters floating around New York City. I sent t-shirts to some people. I've got t-shirts I've been giving to people. Please wear this stuff. It's a really helpful, useful free marketing tool for getting me more listeners and more people involved in this great thing that I'm in love with so much. I'm wearing right now my Cross Ice Pass hat. I got them in black and red. I only got 5 made because I want to see the interest before I start going crazy with them. Here's the red one. You probably saw it in my last episode. Of course, they all say Coach. My samples all say Coach. But if I get them mass produced, or at least get maybe 50 of them or something, and people are interested, I won't put Coach on them. Maybe I will. I don't know. And yeah, the T-shirt is still around, and only on YouTube you'll see this. But the back says, "What's your fondest hockey memory?" which is my go-to when I start. So, that's about it for episode 35. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to comment. I'm adding little shorts to YouTube as well as stories on Instagram. I'm getting a lot of views there, and I know a lot of people don't watch the entire podcast because that's just data. But tell your friends, get people out. I mean, I really feel strongly about the content we have on this show and the guests that I'm getting. So please join me for that big Cross Ice Pass right to your tape so you can drive it into the net. Or maybe give me back a pass because I probably will score more. Anyway, all right. Much love. See you in the next episode.
Cross ice pass, a blocking motion, slicing through like waves on the ocean. Tape to tape, with perfect aim, setting up a scoring claim. From every pond to the old Olympia, hockey's a sport that has it all. Cross ice pass, a thing of beauty, scoring goals, it's our duty. So lace 'em up and join the fun. Hockey fever has begun. Create the play, skillful feet, celebrating wins so sweet. Coach's voice booms from the bench, calling plays an expert cinch. Pucks on net, let 'em rip. We'll bring the chip to our grip. Resurfacing the ice every game. The Zamboni makes it smooth and precise. This pass needs no bumps, so the biscuit doesn't jump. Cross ice pass, a popping motion, slicing through like